decided to unsubscribe you. And first order of business, be sure to hit the like button. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, does anyone remember how the Commerce Secretary or the Treasury Secretary took to the lectern and told Asian American businesses that when it comes to keeping their businesses afloat in the face of so-called xenophobia, to tell them, you guys got to be responsible. Take personal responsibility for your circumstances. Go to a bank and get a loan. It's not the federal government's job to keep everyone afloat, especially when there are businesses that have shown that they know so much about finance, they know so much about business. So that being the case, you need to go to a bank. This is a situation for the private sector. Does anyone remember the Treasury Secretary lecturing Asian Americans about that? Anybody remember the Commerce Secretary lecturing them about that, or the Attorney General lecturing them that, well, if there's any sort of issues that you guys are having as far as so-called xenophobia goes, well, what you guys should do is pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, or you should take greater care, or, well, if you guys feel that your businesses are being targeted for exclusion, well, that being the case, maybe you need to write a letter or something. Me neither. See, when it comes to these other groups, what happens is you got these governmental organizations saying, we're going to set up a hotline so you can talk directly to the Attorney General of New York's office, and we're going to get on this for you. If you need some help, we're going to make sure that there's something specifically for you. If you've got some sort of concern, we're going to make sure that we're going to do something that specifically benefits Asian American businesses or benefits immigrants, which means Latinos, because that's what they mean by it. They ain't talking about Haitian immigrants. That's for dang sure. They ain't talking about Jamaican immigrants. They're only talking about ones from south of the border who speak Spanish. But when it comes to black people, instead of there being talk about tangibles, instead of there being talk about federal monies, instead of there being talk about funding, instead it's lectures. We get told that, well, there's something you guys are doing, or we get some sort of phony baloney sympathy, the usual empty hot air chatter about underserved communities. Oh, we must do better. Yeah, must do better without actually saying what you're going to do. And of course, we were treated to some weapons grade hot air from the current Surgeon General Jerome Adams, who I'm convinced that Trump just basically went to some sort of free clinic somewhere, saw this clown in a back alley doling out favors and said, yeah, this is the kind of guy that we should put on the payroll. He won't be in trouble. He decided, this Surgeon General, who I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's supposed to make him such an exceptional medical mind, but considering who it is that he works for, I don't think I should be that questioning about his lack of qualifications. He, of course, was famously the last couple of weeks lecturing the African American community about COVID-19 infection rates and deaths. He was saying that African Americans should avoid alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. And did you hear how this clearly member of the LGBT community, how this guy was saying it? Do it for your abuela. Do it for your granddaddy. Do it for your big mama. Do it for your pop. We need to understand, especially in communities of color, we need you to step up and stop the spread so that we can protect those who are most vulnerable. Just the condescension, like he's talking to children. Do it for your granddaddy. Do it for your big mama. Do it for your pop. This is supposed to be how America's doctor talks to the citizenry, of course, but when you're talking about black people, we're not considered citizens. So it's a matter of, let's make that very clear. We're talking to this other group over here. Well, first of all, this clown was so busy trying to lecture black people. He was so eager to wag his finger at the black community that he didn't stop to think that black people are the main ones who work essential jobs, jobs that cannot be done from home, because these jobs can't be done over the internet. These jobs can't be digitized. Now, in my last video essay, how the white media put a black face on the pandemic, I pointed out exactly that as a case study with just the Bronx, but it's not just the Bronx, it's nationwide. This is exactly what's going on here. White power creates a problem, and then blames the victims of that problem for the fact that they have not solved the problem that white supremacy created and exacerbates and promotes. But this is supposed to be America's doctor. The grocery stores, the big box stores, the delivery services, fast food restaurants, all the jobs outside of the digital economy, these are mostly staffed by Black people. Jobs that absolutely require hand labor, that absolutely require a lot of burning up shoe leather. You got to be walking a lot of manual labor. These are the jobs that that Black people are relegated to, the jobs that pay the least, have no protections. And by the way, the Surgeon General didn't seem to have much of a lecture for companies and corporations telling them, you've got to protect those workers. They've got to have PPE. And you got to make sure they have at least 6 feet of space between them and their coworkers. That's your responsibility. You businesses, you corporations, you need to step up and stop the spread so we can protect those who are most vulnerable. And you got the money to do it with. Notice how he didn't do that. No lectures for the white corporations, but he's got plenty of finger wagging for Black people. And the jobs that Black people work, these are the few parts of the U.S. economy that are still functioning. What little economic wherewithal, what little economic steam the country is still producing is largely the disproportionate result of Black people's labor. And we are the main ones who are bearing the brunt of this pandemic spread because of the fact that we're the ones who are out and about having to go about our jobs even without personal protective equipment. These are Black folks that you're seeing suffering like this. This is Black people who are carrying this load. And Adams' pathetic defense of his idiotic words by claiming, well, this is how I talk about my family. Well, first of all, stupid, you ain't talking to your family. You're talking to the individuals who write your paycheck. No doctor comes in and, well, I just talk like that to my family. You're supposed to be a freaking health professional. You don't assume some sort of familiarity with me. That's the thing. He wouldn't be talking to white people like that. He wouldn't be saying, do it for your auntie and do it. Yeah, and make sure that you do it for dad, do it for daddy. And of course, you don't have to go very far before you find that Mr. Adams happens to have a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white wife, but he doesn't have much in the way of reprimands for the white community. He's got some children by her too, and he doesn't seem to be very concerned with pointing out to the Black community, hey, this is how I talk to my family. Yeah, your white wife and your biracial kids. Do you talk to your white wife like that? Do you tell her about the alcohol and drugs because you didn't have much to say when you were in front of the podium? So I take it that's how you talk to her. See, this is who Jerome Adams' family really is. While he's faking in front and about, like, this is how I talk to my family. Yeah, really, yeah. So he goes up to his white wife and talks to her about her pawpaw and Big Mama, right? This is a picture of Jerome's wife with his wife and his white and his biracial kids, and there you got Mike Pence struggling to hold down his lunch. This is the man who's lecturing the Black community and telling lies through his teeth about how, well, this is the way that I talk to my family. Yeah, but I bet you don't talk to this family like that. He damn sure didn't have anything to say about them then. So this is the guy that you're taking medical advice from? No, he has no credibility. You got to be careful. Don't be letting white supremacists get away with sending some sock puppet out there and he tells you lies and you're sitting here just gobbling it up because you haven't asked any questions about who his people really are. The Surgeon General isn't very interested in racializing the opioid crisis. That's an almost exclusively white pandemic going on. And he ain't saying nothing about that. He's not saying, the white community, you guys need to do better. You need to step up. People are dying, people losing their lives, communities devastated. You need to step up. Do it for your pappy, and do it for your mammy, and do it for your granddaddy and your auntie. He ain't talking like that to them. He's got a white wife, and he's not very concerned about the white community at all. You got the worst drug epidemic in human history going on in the white community, and the Surgeon General, well, he's not talking to white people about it. Apparently, it's not that serious. He wouldn't go up to white people talking about any sort of disease or any sort of ailment that affects mostly white people. And most of the ailments, by the way, do affect white people, and yet he doesn't talk like that. Not to them, he doesn't. I told you about the measles outbreak last year. among ultra-Orthodox Jews. And I bet you he ain't going to be sitting there talking to the ultra-Orthodox Jews or any Jewish people or any white people for that matter like that. He's not going to be talking to non-black people like that and saying, well, now, I'm not up on my Yiddish terms, so you can insert here the Yiddish equivalent of your pop and big mama, etc. Whatever condescending term you want that would be the Yiddish equivalent of it, he didn't do that with them. In fact, he didn't seem to have much to say about them at all. He wasn't trying to make it seem as if, oh, well, we want to say to the public that this group over here, they need to be stopped. They need to stop spreading diseases and such. He didn't single them out to try to typify or characterize them like that, but he did do that with the black community. And if you did bring up ultra-Orthodox Jews, then he would say, well, we have to be concerned about everyone. And, everybody, it's not just them, it's everyone. Yeah, all of a sudden you'd be like, well, that's everybody. Can anyone think of any other Surgeon General who pulled a stunt like this? Now, was Jerome Adams putting on a show for his boss, the rabid anti-black racist Trump? Sure he was. But this is not out of the ordinary. Jerome Adams' behavior, his condescension and disrespect, this is par for the course, not just for Republicans, but for American politics in general. Because when I had heard Adams talking down to the black community like this, singling us out to wag his finger at us, it reminded me of Barack Obama and how he would do the same thing regarding the black fathers. He would talk about the black community in general, but he would single out black men in specific to be especially criticized. Oh, there's something wrong with you. Well, you guys need to do this and you need to do that. It didn't matter how many school shootings there were. He wasn't about to tell the white community, you need to do this and you need to do that. He wasn't about to. And he has a white mother. He has a white mother, and yet he was not about to try to play that game of, well, as you all know, my mother was white, and I was raised by my white grandmother. And that being the case, I've been around white people my entire life. Why, every woman that I ever dated or slept with was white before Michelle. She's the only non-white woman that I lowered myself to be with. And because of that, I think that it's undisputable that obviously I can't have some anti-white bias. Why, I'm half white myself. Have you ever noticed that they don't pull that stunt with white people? Barack Obama was not about to try to call himself lecturing the white community under any circumstances. And you better believe if he had some sort of Freudian slip, he was not about to try to play the, well, why, my family's white. He knew better than that. They don't try that with white people. They'll do it all day with black people, though. Why, some of my best friends are black. Why, I've got some black family members, don't you know? So that means I can say anything about you niggers that I want. They don't try that with the white community. They only try that with black people. I want you to notice how white supremacy makes sure to select black men whose sexuality is fluid to lecture us. They make sure to pick the right tool for the job. This is how the white media reinforces its anti-black rhetoric on the slick. This is how they do that mess. They make sure to single us out to be talked down to. They've learned that it's too risky, too hazardous. It would be too on the nose to have a Bill Bennett or some other white racist do the dirt. So they let some black bootlick go ahead and spew their nonsense, and then they can cover it. Oh, look at what Jerome Adams said. Why, we are absolutely enraptured with the health of the black community. Really? Which, of course, we all know is a load of horse crap, typical white supremacist nonsense. Because if they were so hot and bothered about the health of the black community, why was it when the Surgeon General David Satcher, he put out his study pointing out that black people are disproportionately receiving inferior health care? The white media wasn't concerned about that and didn't seem to make any sort of impression on Jerome Adams either. So the white media is so concerned about the health of the black community, then they need to listen to the black community. But of course, that's not the white media's job. Their job is to legitimize and justify, and to the extent that they can, try to intellectualize white supremacy's attacks on us. And to treat it as if there's something basically right about it, to try to rationalize it. Why what they're saying is factually true, you know, when the only thing that's true is they said it. Is Jerome Adams right? Is what he's saying the truth? Well, the only thing true is he said it. That's all that's true. But they use the black bootlicks, let them get out there and spew some lies, and then the white media will cover it excessively. They won't point out that it's wrong. They're not going to criticize it. They're not going to even have any sort of balance because that's not their job. And when you point this out, they will say, well, we're not saying we agree with Adams' words, even though they will make sure that whatever anchor person or reporter or panel is discussing his words, they'll make sure that that panel or reporter or anchor agrees with it. They're definitely not going to be poking holes in it or shooting it down or saying that there's anything wrong with it. They're going to be treating it as if what he's saying, even if you disagree, you can't disagree with the fact that he's basically right, you know. You know, we had that ice bucket challenge for whatever the world that disease was, Parkinson's. I can't remember what the hell it was, but you had that ice bucket challenge. Notice how nobody was pointing out that white people need to change their behavior or that, oh, we need to be concerned. They never racialize a disease or an ailment whenever it's affecting white people. When it affects white people, it's just health. Same thing with crime. When white people commit crime, it's not white crime. It's not white on white crime. 85+% of white people are killed by other white people. But there's no white on white crime problem. 85% of white people are killed by other white people. 90% of black people are killed by other black people. A 5% difference. Oh my God, what? Black on black crime? It's an epidemic. So what does that tell you? And what the white media won't do is to excessively publicize whatever anyone who criticizes Jerome Adams has to say. You had NBC, they put out a one and done story about it. And the way that they, even though that they made some intelligent points, they also made sure, predictably, that they were going to mischaracterize it or water it down or otherwise put a slant on it to make it seem like, well, what he's saying is basically right. Okay, we'll go ahead and put a little bit of truth in there, but we're not going to say that he's wrong. They use headlines that say stuff like black health experts say Surgeon General's comments reflect lack of awareness of black community. Lack of awareness. Yeah, they're watering down the criticism on this one. They're making very sure not to go very far with that one. Now, in Nothing But Caucasians, NBC's online piece, they quoted a Linda Blunt, who happens to be an African-American epidemiologist. And one of the things that she pointed out, and I thought that she actually made some good points here, and I'm surprised that NBC actually posted it. But what she pointed out was there's nothing wrong if that's how he talks among his family. But wait a minute, why are you not personally outraged that you have some 40% or more people that have underlying preventable chronic diseases? Why aren't you addressing that? Yeah, so much for America's doctor, because you didn't have to wait for COVID-19 to see if the black community is disproportionately affected by diseases and to speak up about it. If he's so dang concerned about the black community, he didn't care until the last month or so, and he only cares about black people to the extent that he can lecture black people. His concern for black people begins and ends with the extent to which he can wag his finger at us. If he doesn't see an opportunity to wag his finger at us, well, we're not going to be talking about that. We're not worried about that. Everybody's got health concerns. Black people aren't special. See, white supremacy, as Neely Fuller put it, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the argument. That way, no matter what happens, they are always right. Or at the very least, they have cover to say, well, I'm not wrong. But this Linda Blunt went on to point out that he comes across as if he's lecturing. There it is. Now, that's what the headline should have been. Black healthcare professionals, black healthcare experts say that the Surgeon General is lecturing the black community. Black health experts accuse Surgeon General of lecturing black community. Black healthcare experts ask why the Surgeon General doesn't care about all the other means that black people have been dying from for the longest time. That's what the headline should have been. But this, of course, was not about trying to actually examine what the black community says. This is about some one and done cover our behinds piece that they can put out there. So if anybody accuses them, hey, you didn't cover what the black community thinks, well, sure we did. We did one little piece buried somewhere on a website, and God knows if you'll ever find it. But this Linda Blunt woman, she says the exact same thing that I had told you. 20 to 25% of blacks have to get on a bus, get on a train, and go someplace to work on a job where they are in front of people. And what needs to be pointed out is these jobs, by the way, are low paying jobs where the employers do not give the employees personal protective equipment, and the government is not making them do so. That's what gets left out. That's what needs to be mentioned. Let's not make it seem as if, oh, well, these black people, they're just going to work. No, they're going to work and they're being deliberately put in a position where they're not being given any sort of protection. And then the Surgeon General gets to turn around and say, well, you guys, you need to do better. You Negroes, you need to, if you guys would stop messing up, you need to step up. The black community is the only one stepping up. We are the ones who are keeping the economy going. We are the ones who are working the essential jobs without any sort of personal protective equipment. Black people are the ones out there carrying the economy on our backs under the most hazardous of conditions. You need to step up. You need to step up. Well, considering the Surgeon General's orientation, I do have to wonder if Malik Yoba is behind the scenes, behind a curtain somewhere going, tell him step up. Put that word out there. Tell him step up. That's what I call it too. I call it stepping up. Isn't it interesting how we have these black men of a certain sexual orientation who like to use that term step up? They really are fond of that term. They really love throwing that term around. And why is that? It's a fair question. But don't let NBC get away with murder on this one. They weren't doing this to do black folks any favor, but this is what, if any sort of so-called coverage is supposed to be accurate, this is what it's supposed to be. All of this talking down to black people, that being the case, he's going to be called out on that. Trying to make it sound like, well, black people, you guys need to exercise better discretion. You need to step up. He doesn't lecture the employers, doesn't go to the government and say, we need to be making sure that all these black people who are on the front lines working these essential jobs, that they're protected. That's not the way that he looked at it because he wasn't supposed to. What kind of doctor gives his brain dead opinion about a patient without even asking what they do for a living, without even asking the circumstances under which they live their lives? He doesn't give any mention to that. Because the moment that he does, then it becomes a matter of, oh, the black community's been put in this position. Okay, we may actually have to bring up and address structural racism, which of course means money. You're not addressing structural racism at all without money. And it's a matter of, no, we're not going to talk about that. This is all black people's fault. But of course, Jerome Adams was not concerned about being made to look like a fool on this one. He already knows that his back is covered by the white media and white power in general. He just sputters his unthinking mind rot, and he doesn't care because he knows that there's no price that he's going to have to pay for it, no professional price, no PR price. He's not going to be criticized for it. It's not like the white media or any Democrats, certainly not the black congressional talkers, are going to call him out on it. And by the way, I want you to notice that. You would think that the white media would be only too eager to use this incident as ammunition to criticize Trump, but they didn't, because Jerome Adams' anti-black condescension reflects the white media's anti-black condescension. He's saying what they want to say, so they're going to go ahead and amplify and signal boost that. No one would question his credentials or his fitness to hold the office that he's in, or point out how patently stupid his words are and how it flies in the face of common sense of the facts, and how can this guy be America's doctor when he's too stupid to realize that black people are the ones on the front lines. Nobody ever brings that fact up into the discussion. The entire discussion, if the white media wants to talk about black people and COVID-19, the entire discussion should be framed in its proper context, which is black people are the essential workers on the front lines, having absolutely no personal protective equipment and keeping this economy carried on our backs. And that being the case, why have we been singled out to be made cannon fodder? You see, they definitely ain't going to point out that black workers are being made to be cannon fodder in this invisible war. Oh, but they did make sure to say that about illegal aliens, though. All those Latinos who are out there, they did make sure to point out, well, there needs to be some money. Ain't that what Gavin Newsom said? Well, we need to make sure they get some money, too, because, these are the people who pick crops, and these are the people who wash our cars, and these are the people who take care of my kids. And that's the way that they framed it when it came time to talk about Latinos and COVID-19. It became a discussion about why these are the guys who they keep the country going. Why these are the guys who make America go, especially at a time like this. They're the ones who are working all those essential jobs. But when it comes time to talk about black people, all of a sudden, well, you need to step up. You need to stop the spread. What's wrong with you people? You need to do it for your granddaddy and your big mama and your pop-pop. You guys are higher risk because you're black. But notice that he was very vague, appropriately vague, as far as what he's meaning. Black people need to step up. We need you to step up. We, as if he's not black. That's what he was saying. We need you to step up. And then later on, he's going, well, I'm black. He's canceling himself out, contradicting himself. But then again, you ain't got to make sense. Under white supremacy, you don't have to make sense. You just have to make war on black people. That's what you have to do. But he doesn't go into specifics about what it is that black people aren't doing, mainly because that ain't going to fly. He just says black people need to step up. Nobody else gets talked to like this. Well, here's the thing. The black media is making it real clear that as black folks, we're not taking any lecturing. We're not taking any being talked down to. You're not going to be coming to us and speaking to us as if, black people have some sort of pathological deficiency of some sort. And black people, you guys would just stop messing up the program. Everything would be fine. That day is done. The black baby boomers, they let you walk all over them and talk to them any way you want. You ain't talking to us like that. To hell with your condescension. To hell with your doggone happy talk. We're not hearing anything except for where are those tangibles. That's what we're hearing. Where's those federal funds? That's what we want to hear. You decided that the Hispanics, the illegal aliens, that they were going to be getting money simply because Asian American businesses need money simply because, and the black community needs money simply because. Any discussion about the black community in American political circles is to be framed in one context and one context only. The bag. Full stop. Oh, well, we've got some healthcare concerns. Well, the answer is money. Well, there happens to be some persistent medical inequities in the black community. Well, the answer is money. That's how you make those medical inequities equal. Money. That's how you do it. Funding. That's the answer to it all. Well, we couldn't help but notice that there happened to be a couple of differences between the black community and the rest of it. Well, the way that you make those differences into similarities is money, because that's the difference. The difference is money. It all comes back to money. And you do not let anybody else talk around that or pull some, I'm black. You can see I'm black, and because of that, we don't have to talk about money. No. Anytime you talk about the black community, the only thing that's talked about is how the money's going to be transferred from your pockets because you took it from us. Get it out of your pocket and put it back into ours. That is the totality of the discussion. We are not going to be lectured. We're not going to be talked down to. We're not going to have anybody deciding to change the subject or we need to talk about something else. No, we're going to talk about what the black community wants to talk about. What we want to talk about is the bag. Specifically, why the hell you ain't dropping it off. The reason that these clowns practice chronic disrespect of the black community is because they've been allowed to get away with it. Barack Obama's attacking black men, and you got people who are giving lukewarm responses. To hell with that. What you give is the response that was given to Michael Bloomberg. You call that bastard out. You make his life a living hell. You make it very clear. You attack us, and what's going to happen is you get called out. You're not going to be able to commit crimes against the black community for free. The cost will be heavy. Jerome Adams figures to himself that he's basically going to carry water for white supremacy, attack black folks, and then he'll have some white companies and white think tanks. They'll cake him off by putting him on the lecture circuit. That's how a lot of these clowns who attack the black community get paid off. That's their payoff. You heard about that with Hillary Clinton and how she would be getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaking fees. See, this is how white power hides its bribes and hides its money that it gives to people who have carried water for them and done their bidding. They hide it in the form of so-called legitimate businesses. Why would anybody pay that much money? Because that was the deal. The deal that she made with them was, you make sure I get caked off, They're like, well, we got to do it a certain way. You go ahead and show up at one of our little functions at some stupid little auditorium that we rented for a few $1,000s, and you'll get a $500,000 check. Yeah, corrupt politicians get a check. Asian American businesses get a check. Latinos, illegal immigrants get a check. And the black community gets a lecture. Don't dream. You can forget about that. We're getting a check. And we're going to hit you hard as hell about it because you need to understand this is a brand new day. The day and age of black people politely listening while people are sitting here talking down to us, that day is over. That's what Michael Bloomberg found out. As soon as he got in front of black people talking that dumb stuff, the black folks stood up and turned their backs on him. And the white media had to call the time of death on his campaign damn near the very next day. So what does that tell you? They're trying to see if they can still condition us to be willing abuse victims. That's what this is about. Can we browbeat these guys and can we put them on the defensive? It's going to be a daily drumbeat of let's just keep coming at them and see if we can get them on the defensive and make them say, you're right, we need to do better. What's wrong with us? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to condition us that, well, there's something wrong with you people. And if you guys would just admit that you're the ones who are the vectors for this coronavirus, everything would be fine. But you need to admit that you're doing this. No, we're not admitting to any lies. Now, for those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, you should, because that's where Professor Black Truth decides to drop some bombs, stuff that I think might be a little bit too on the nose for PukeTube. I like to post that stuff on my Twitter feed. And one of the things that I posted was that in West Michigan, you now have a large growth in COVID-19 cases. For those of you who don't know, Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, that's in East Michigan. Meanwhile, you got the rest of the state, which is the white portion of Michigan. That happens to be where you got the COVID-19 cases that have a surge. Gee, I guess for those of you who wonder, whatever happened to all of those sawed-off white supremacists who had their Confederate flags and they were calling themselves chanting and making veiled threats at Michigan's governor? Whatever became of those idiots a week or so ago? Whatever happened to those guys? Well, now you see what happened to them. You ever wonder whatever became of all that? Well, what happened is these guys are helping coronavirus to surge. I guess as far as they're concerned, this is our idea of herd immunity. Well, when it comes to the white supremacists, herd definitely describes them. Two-legged bovine. Ain't got the sense that God gave the average cow munching grass. So I do think that herd immunity certainly would apply to the white supremacists. But this is how they get treated. And by the way, the governor has decided she's going to start backtracking on some things. Well, maybe we were a tad hasty. Okay, so a bunch of white supremacists show up with Confederate flags and assault rifles in tow. They're making all sorts of veiled threats. They are deliberately causing gridlock, stopping emergency workers from being able to carry out their jobs. Nobody's getting arrested. No one calls in the National Guard. The sheriff's department doesn't make it clear we're bringing in the armored vehicles. We're going to go ahead and show these white supremacists the hardware. They don't do that. They don't deliberately set up lines to make it clear that, hey, these places that you're going through, this is only for emergency vehicles or through traffic only. Or if you're coming through here, we're going to do you like Texas, and you better have a valid reason for being in these places. They don't do that. And nobody's passing any laws. Yeah, we got a bunch of white supremacists deciding that they're going to lay siege to a state's capital. Nobody's saying any laws about how, well, if these guys are out there in public, if they're out there blocking the roadways, you should be able to hit them with your car. We want to legalize that. Nobody's doing that with them. Nobody's doing that. Even your black politicians, they're not saying, well, we need some reciprocal laws because we remember what happened with Black Lives Matters. We're demonstrating. We remember the laws that went on the books. So we need some reciprocal laws because clearly these lawless white supremacists need to be stopped. There's no attorney generals filing lawsuits saying, hey, these clowns online who are deliberately trying to bring movement in our cities to a standstill, illegally trying to organize deliberate attempts to stop traffic flow, especially in the middle of a pandemic when emergency workers' time is of the essence, and they're deliberately trying to stop our emergency workers and first responders from being able to carry out their jobs. These guys need to be dragged into court. This is a crime. Now, we're not criminalizing when the white supremacists decide that they're going to call themselves disrupting the society. Black people were not disrupting anything. Black people were standing up for themselves and they were exercising their rights. The white supremacists, on the other hand, they weren't standing up for themselves. They have some big money white supremacist donors, the Robert Mercers and the William Regnerys and the rest of the garbage who get floated these clowns some money. And I guess what little meth that they didn't use it on, whatever didn't go to their meth habit, they decided to drag their carcasses down to the State House in Lansing. And you see what the result of that has been. I wonder if Jerome Adams is going to be lecturing them and say, you need to do it. You guys need to step up. All of these demonstrations are not helping anything. You need to step up. Do it for your daddy and do it for your mommy and do it for your grandpappy. And you guys need to step up. He ain't doing that. But of course, we all know what the reason for that is. On its face, the superficial reason would be, well, this is who Donald Trump says are supporters of his. These are people who like him. Those demonstrators, they like me a lot. They like me a lot. So, of course, this is the president's base, but that's not the real reason, because he wouldn't do it even under a Democratic administration. Jerome Adams would not dare to criticize those white supremacists who were clogging up the highways and avenues and roads in Michigan, Wisconsin, and elsewhere. He wouldn't dare criticize any of them or point out to them that, hey, you guys are spreading this disease. He wouldn't dare do that under any administration, even if the people doing it were the enemies of the president that he served under. He still wouldn't do it, because he knows what his job is. His job is to comfort and support white supremacy, not to criticize it, not to question it, not to say that something should be done about it. He knows exactly the game that he's playing, and he knows who he's playing for. It ain't Donald Trump, it's white supremacy. Jerome Adams gets that. He knows what his real job is. Now, the process of teaching people how to treat us, that's not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. Because we have spent hundreds of years, and the last 150 years in particular, with the last 50 years being the most egregious, teaching people they can just walk all over us, talk to us any old kind of way, and that as long as you don't use the N-word, why, we'll nod our heads and agree with it as if you said something smart, when actually you said the dumbest thing possible. We have conditioned people to think they can get away with talking down to us. We have conditioned people to give themselves permission to attack us, to give themselves a pass. You got all sorts of racist white supremacists. You've got bigoted Asians and such, Latinos who trash black people and talk about it using the N-word and everything else, and say they use the exact same excuses that the white supremacists do. You see, you got a whole bunch of folk who, as far as they're concerned, they think they know what the script is. They can give themselves a get-out-of-jail-free card because black people have been tolerating that. We've been letting them get away with that mess, not calling them out on it. It's time out for that. That day has got to be done. Jerome Adams cannot be allowed to believe that he's just going to spew this garbage, or anyone else to think they can do this garbage. Because you had Van Jones basically doing the same doggone thing, trying to see if he can get some mileage out of that. Criticizing black folks about lifestyle choices. There you go with that garbage, lifestyle choices. Black people did not choose to be essential workers. Black people have been shut out of the digital economy. Black people did not choose to have dirt wages that make it where you can't actually do anything with it other than come to work the very next day. Black people did not choose that. Black people did not choose to live in a society where you're under constant stress because you are a people under siege, which takes a huge toll on your health. That makes it where when diseases come through, you're much more likely to suffer from a heart attack, much more likely to suffer from some sort of ailment. All of the stress of living under white supremacy, the stress of being a black person under white supremacy, it takes a huge toll on the human body. It lowers everything, lowers your metabolism, lowers your immune system. It lowers everything. It reduces and degrades you biologically because you're under relentless, never-ending stress. Because you're under relentless, never-ending racial oppression. And then he talks about lifestyle choices. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is there's a program at work here. It's just like with Gail Skank. She got called out by the black community. Here comes Orca. Well, we got to stick up for her. This is basically some rear guard action. We're going to try to stick up for her because we can't just basically say, you got to limp off with your tail between your legs. They got to say this so they can claim that they got themselves a victory. See, we didn't just walk away when the black people said you better back off. We gave them, we got the last word in before we slink away. But on a side note, I do think that it bears noting that I was just curious whatever became of our old friend Kamala Harris, Kama Sutra Harris, and whatever became of old Alexandria Ocasio Horseface. Oh, I'm sure that at a time like this, those two paragons of virtue and decency and courage, I'm sure that they are tackling the single most important issues facing the nation. Surely they are. Well, these days it seems that Kamala Harris is preparing for her new career. I guess she wants to be a daytime lifestyle coach or something. She wants to be the next Rachel Ray or Martha Stewart. These days she's on Instagram talking about the art of a tuna sandwich. But this is what Kamala Harris is doing. And check out the Howard University apron that she's got on. Oh, yeah, you can tell some idiots getting ready for their 2024 run. Everybody knows that Joe Biden ain't got a snowball's chance in hell of winning. So I guess Kamala Harris is like, God dang it, if I'm not going to be VP, if I'm not going to be your running mate as VP at the very least, I'm going to get ready to run in a few more years. Ain't that right, Fife? That's what Kamala Harris is up to. She's setting up another presidential campaign run that she can't win. But this is what she does. This is how she's spending her time these days. She's teaching people how to make a tuna sandwich. This is supposed to be the woman who would be queen. Amazing. And of course, we can't leave out Alexandria Ocasio Horseface. She's not very concerned about Joe Biden ignoring her constituency because she's not paying very much attention to them either. This is what's going on. I don't know if this is Instagram or what the heck program this is, because I'm not really up on that cell phone stuff because I value my privacy more than that. But the thing is, I'm assuming this is Instagram that she's on or some variant thereof. And the thing is, she's sitting here showing people how to make margarita cocktails. This is what Alexandria Horseface is doing when she's not trying to figure out how she can manipulate black tools like Puff Daddy, or should I say Puff Dummy, P. Dimwit, or the Breakfast Schlubs, or whatever other black tool for white supremacy, some black sock puppet that's giving her a platform and pretending as if, oh, the black community just loves this AOC woman. Oh, why, that black-brown alliance is alive and well. When she's not pulling that con game, this is what she's doing. And I can't help but thinking that she's trying to drown her tears. She's trying to drown her sorrows because the black community's been making it clear to her, we ain't going for the okie doke. So this is what Kamala Harris and AOC have been reduced to. AOC, she's been hitting the bottle, literally. The black community ain't going for the old smoke and mirrors. The black community is making it clear, nah, you ain't going to be pulling some Obama and doing some, well, I said that I got some black friends, and that means you niggers are going to get behind me and you're going to back me, right? That's what she thought was going to happen. It ain't happening. So now she's hitting the bottle. She's boozing pretty heavy, which would explain a lot about this woman, by the way. I just wanted to mention this because these are the people who want you to take them seriously. Alexandria Horseface is getting ready to get her old job back in that bar where she was bartending at. And I guess Kamala Harris is getting ready for a new career as a short order chef. But this is supposed to be what qualifies as leadership. And you wonder why it is that the black vote's looking and going, nah, we're holding out for something better, black empowerment. This is what they think is supposed to appeal to black people. Because as far as they're concerned, that's all you niggers are about, right? You guys, basically, what you're about is eating fish. We hear you guys like fish. We heard that. So you guys like fast food and you like alcohol, right? Because that's what Jerome Adams was saying. You guys need to lay off the drugs and the booze. And this is the mindset of white supremacy. And this is why white supremacy is going to fall, but it will not fall without our help. And that's something that needs to be said. White supremacy is not going to be, we can't count on white supremacy keeling over all on its own, nor should we want to. We should want to take pride in knowing that we slayed the greatest monster of all time, that we put this demon in hell where it belongs. We should take pride in wanting to slay white supremacy, that evil ideology. We should take pride in putting an end to the most sick, reprehensible system that's ever existed in all of human history. We should take pride in that. We should not be hoping that an asteroid or a pandemic takes down white supremacy. We should feel robbed if it's not us. Because that's what happens when you have a people who are acting in their own power. They do not want future generations to say, well, where were you when white supremacy fell? Well, we were hunkered down somewhere trying to find a comfortable place under white supremacy. We were hiding out somewhere. No, what you want to say is we were on the front lines. We had our iron heel on white supremacy's neck, and we smiled as white supremacy gasped its last breath. And because we knew that it was tortured, it was strangling. We knew that white supremacy was in more pain than it had ever experienced, and that we were the ones who put it in such excruciating agony. We should be proud to be able to say that to future generations. The white supremacy, it went out of this world in a horrible fashion. How did white supremacy die? Not well, not comfortably. It did not go well into that long night. It went screaming, yelling. It went gasping for air. It went begging for mercy, and we showed white supremacy no mercy. We were not going to allow white supremacy to come back in 100 years or in 1,000 years or ever. We should take pride in that. We should not be playing around with the idea that white supremacy is something that's just going to go away on its own. You know, like Trump and his COVID-19 is going to go away with the spring. No, white supremacy, it doesn't deserve to be able to just sit down somewhere and just peacefully go away. No, white supremacy needs to have our foot squarely up its behind up until its last moment. That's what needs to happen. But that doesn't happen unless we do that. You're not going to get black empowerment part-time or get it every blue moon or by putting out effort whenever the mood hits. Black empowerment has to be something that you're doing 24/7. As black people, we got to be on our business. How you deal with other black people, that is what will make the difference between whether or not white supremacy falls or whether or not white supremacy gets to hang around. I am far more interested in what we are doing than in what white supremacy is doing, because when we are focused, when we are on code, when we are mobilized, white supremacy's got no choice but to back the hell up. Jerome Adams thinks to himself that he's gotten away with something. Whether or not he has will entirely come down to what you and I do. So please don't think to yourself that you're going to be able to do this through half measures. Won't be enough. Vigorous, aggressive action is what's called for here. And the first action that should always be taken is you speak up for yourself. You don't let these bastards come in and play the old game of, well, you know, if something's going wrong in the black community, it's because of what you niggers are doing. We do not own this system. We don't control it. We don't administrate it. We don't run it, and we don't enforce it. The position that we're in is not a position that we chose to be in. It's not a position that we landed in. It's a position that we were put in. Any discussion about the black community's place in the social hierarchy begins from that point, and any other position is a lie. And once we have properly framed the discussion, you don't let the bad guys try to claim that they're going to tell us what the answer is. You don't let the bad guys get away with, oh, well, here's our suggestions. Hell, this ain't your discussion. You're here to listen, not to talk. We already know what the answer is. The answer is monetary resources. That's the answer. The answer is tangibles. Something we own, something we control, and something we can pass down. You can keep your sympathy, you can keep your hot air, and you can keep your phony baloney lecturing of us. That ain't hitting on nothing. What we want is the bag. Any other subject is illegitimate, and you won't be getting away with that.